We're going to be looking at episode 6 of the Odyssey called The Land of the Dead. Here, Odysseus is sent to the land of the dead after he is at the witch Circe's for a few seasons. And we are going to see a couple of things. We're going to see the rites that Odysseus has to perform in order to bring Tiresias up from the land of the dead. And we are also going to see some things as far as Odysseus' fate or destiny, and warnings about what's to come and challenges he may face on his journey. So during reading, there are a couple of things I'm going to ask you to do, but we're going to do them in chunks because we're going to read and reread this section. So the first time we read it, I just want you guys to look for one example of indirect characterization for Odysseus. Highlight it and pay attention to just basic plot, what's going on. So follow along with me as we read this first section. We're going to read the section that says read this first, obviously first. In the land of the dead, Odysseus seeks to learn his destiny. And all that destiny means is kind of fate or what you don't have control over as far as the future. The source of his information is Tiresias, the famous blind prophet from the city of Thebes. The prophet's lack of external sight, the meaning that he's blind, suggests the presence of true insight. Circe has told Odysseus exactly what rites he must perform to bring Tiresias up from the dead. Odysseus continues telling his story to King Alcinous's court. Then I addressed the blurred and breathless dead, vowing to slaughter my best heifer, which is just a young female cow, for them before she calved, at home in Ithaca, and burn the choice bits on the altar fire. As for Tiresias, I swore to sacrifice a black lamb, handsomest of all our flock, thus to assuage the nation's dead. And that word assuage just means to make an unpleasant feeling less intense. So he's going to assuage the nations of the dead. I pledged these rites, then slashed the lamb and ewe, letting their black blood stream into the well pit. Now the souls gathered, stirring out Erebus, and that's the god of darkness. He's the son of chaos. Brides and young men, and men grown old in pain, and tender girls whose hearts were new to grief. Many were there, too, torn by the brazen lance heads, battle slain, bearing still their bloody gear. From every side they came and sat the pit with rustling cries. I grew sick with fear, but presently I gave command to my officers to fillet those sheep, the bronze cut down, and make burnt offerings of flesh to the gods below, to sovereign death, to pale Persephone, who is the god or the queen of the underworld. Meanwhile, I crouched with my drawn sword to keep the surging phantoms from the bloody pit till I should know of the presence of Tiresias. Soon from the dark that prince of Thebes came forward bearing a golden staff, and he addressed me. Son of Laertes and the god of old, Odysseus, master of landways and seaways, why leave the blazing sun, O man of woe, to see the cold dead and the joyless region? Stand clear, put up your sword. Let me but taste of blood, I shall speak true. At this I stepped aside, and then the scabbard let my long sword ring home to the pommel silver. And that's just the knob on the end of a handle of a sword, the pommel silver. As he bent down to the somber blood, so that somber just means that it's dark in color, then spoke the prince of those with gift of speech. Great captain, a fair wind and the honey lights of home are all you seek, but anguish lies ahead. The God who thunders on the land prepares it, not to be shaken from your track. And what God is being referenced here in lines around 620-ish, where he says, but anguish lies ahead, the God who thunders on the land prepares it, not to be shaken from your track. Yep, it is Poseidon. Implacable, which means merciless, in rancor, which just means ill will or hate. So he's merciless in hate. For the son whose eyes you blinded. And who would that be? Polyphemus. One narrow strait may take you through his blows. And so here we're going to see some things, some challenges that Odysseus will face in the future in the strait that is being referred to as the Strait of Messina. Denial of yourself, restraint of shipmates. When you make landfall on Thrinacia, first and quiet the violent sea, dark on the land, you'll find the grazing herds of Helios, which is the sun, by whom all things are seen and speech is known. Avoid those kine, which is just an old term for cattle. So he says, stay away from those cattle. Hold fast to your intent, and hard seafaring brings you all to Ithaca. But if you raid those beeves, so if you raid the cattle, I see destruction for your ship and crew. Though you survive alone, befret all the companies, lost for years, under the strange sail shall you come home to find your own house filled with trouble. Insolent, which just means rude or disrespectful. So insolent, disrespectful men eating your livestock as they court, which just means that they want to be kind of involved with romantically. So they're trying to date or marry. Court your lady. And who is Odysseus's lady? Yep, Penelope. You shall make those men atone in blood. But after you have dealt out death in open combat or by stealth, to all the suitors, go over land on foot and take an oar, until one day you come to where men have lived, with meat unsalted, never known the sea, nor seen sea-going ships, with crimson bows and oars that fledge light hulls for dipping flight. The spot will soon be plain to you, and I can tell you how. Some passer-by will say, what winnowing fan is this upon your shoulder? Halt and implant your smooth oar in the turf and make fair sacrifice to Lord Poseidon. A ram, a bull, a great buck boar, turn back and carry out the pure hecatombs at home to all the wide heaven's lords, the undying gods, to each in order. Then a sea-born death, soft as the hand of mist, will come upon you, when you are wearied out with rich old age, your country folk in blessed peace around you, and all this shall be just as I foretell.